Welcome back, I should say, Gareth. It's been 15 years since you graduated, so welcome back. And I think my first question is, how did you get into the industry straight after university?
Gosh, I say 15 years. It sounds like a very long time ago. It only seems like yesterday we were in university. Do you know what? How I got in the industry is kind of a segue. Well, more into TV drama. Um, I know when I left university, I'm probably like most students in our class. I didn't know how, I didn't actually have a clue how to get in the industry. There was no guidance in terms of who to speak to, who to contact. So I was fortunate enough to have a family member that worked in live TV. So I spoke with them. I got in contact with them, and they gave me some numbers and contacts, and that's how I kind of started. So my first step in the industry was actually working in live TV. Um, yeah, and that's where I kind of got started. I think I ended up working on things such like the poker, sport, and then even like the Eisteddfod. I came back 2 years later and filmed the Eisteddfod, the farmers Eisteddfod thing in Aberystwyth, and that was kind of a weird time after being a student there and coming to work there. But yeah, that's how I got started. I worked as like what was called a camera guarantee, where you kind of look after all the camera kit, you kind of set up all the cameras, work with the operators to rig them, and then on longer shoots, you kind of do camera relief. So then, therefore, you take over for half an hour when an operator has a lunch break or has a break, and that's how I kind of started. Um, Live TV was never where I wanted to be. Although even though sometimes it was really entertaining, I always wanted to do drama. But yeah, for me, live TV kind of was an important stepping stone. It's weird because I don't take anything I learned from live TV onto drama as they're two very different entities. But I have to give credit to live TV as as that was the thing that kind of uh, got me into drama, and that was because uh, after kind of doing all the Eisteddfods and all the Welsh TV program, I actually ended up working in London television studios, which at the time was rare because they didn't used to have freelancers take part in a lot of shows. It was always staffed. And the one thing I think someone had lost their passport while they were traveling. They were struggling to get it back, so they ended up booking me for like 2 to 3 weeks on. I think it was Chris Moll's quiz live or Chris Moll's quiz, and that ended up snowballing to like a year almost working in London, and then a year after that. And then from that, I worked on Lorraine and Loose Women, and these seem like ages ago. I ended up filming The Pope. I think when he came to London, that was a completely different experience to anything drama wise. But because of that, I ended up getting a job launching. It shows how long ago it was. We launched a launch program for BBC Three when BBC Three first came about, and that was called Frankenstein's Wedding Live. If any of you've seen it, I doubt you would have. Not the most exciting drama, but it was live, and that was the kind of thing that we brought to it. So as an OB, what we call outside broadcasting, or the sports, we brought all those cameras, and we were kind of used to the element of doing live broadcasts. And this show was going to be live on BBC Three in Kirkstall Abbey in Leeds, in front of an audience, and then live on TV. So from the live TV aspect, we brought that skill, but that was also mixed with crew that had been predominantly drama based, which was great for me. That I kind of got to meet and work with the crew that were all drama based. And there were two DOPs in that shoot. There was one that was kind of doing what we the OB unit, the outside broadcast unit, was Martin Hawkins, DOP, which became very important for me. He basically does all of Ricky Gervais's stuff. He kind of films and lights all of Ricky Gervais's. And then the second DOP he's now obviously done a lot bigger things since then, was Fabian Wagner, who ended up DPing the last few episodes of Game of Thrones and most recently Justice League with Zack Snyder. So I met those two, and those two were kind of really helpful and insightful in what I need to do, and almost kind of giving me the push to go, look, you either kind of stay with live TV and develop a career there, or do what you need to do in drama and take that leap and make yourself unavailable for one side of things and try and make yourself available, which is a risk. I remember at the time with live TV and just starting and not knowing many people, it was hard. I'd get like on some months I used to get like two days a month, which was really hard when you first started and trying to go. It was tough. I remember thinking I'd made the right decisions. But it was Martin Hawkins then who gave me my first job in drama. He gave me my experience as a camera trainee on E4's phone shop, and that was that was loads of fun. I remember being totally bowled over by just what you had to do on set as a trainee, and how different it was to live TV. And yeah, I was so excited by it. I'll say it now, like a camera trainee is probably the hardest working member of the camera team. They do so much, and they work so hard. And I know it doesn't feel like a very creative part of the role, but they're probably a fundamental part of the crew, and they do work really hard. But yeah, because of that, I got into drama, and that was my first venture into drama. And I think from there, then I tried to contact a few production companies, and back then there weren't many production companies shooting in Wales. Um, yeah, I actually tried calling. Well, I've ended up most of my working career has been on BBC Casualty. I tried calling them and get my foot in the door there. And first of all, they kind of, not they didn't want me, but they were booked up and weren't interested. So I could not get a block. They shoot 2 episodes over a 4 week period, and I couldn't get in on a block, what we call a 4 week block. I could not get in. But they had a what was then back then a red button episode where they used to get a lot of people to step up into roles and start their work there. So I ended up on a red button episode for Casualty as an assistant, a camera assistant, a second AC. And from that, I met the focus puller on that. And that tends to happen a lot when you start as a camera trainee or a camera loader. When you go onto sets and you meet a focus puller or another loader, if you work hard and really work well with them, you kind of form a really good team. And then what tends to happen is each team moves on to different jobs. And the focus puller was going on to a Russell T Davies show, Wizards versus Aliens. And then that was my first long production. I think it was like a 6 month shoot. And it felt daunting for the first time after leaving university and trying to work so many years in live TV. It felt daunting saying, "Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to come and work as one role for the 6 months," which sounds weird in the real world of when you take a job for life and you try and build a career. But and then when you're training, you're trying to establish yourself in the industry. You go, oh, if I say yes to this and I don't like it, I can't really back out because there's no other place to go, and I've been looking for this. But to this day, uh, that was probably the best decision I made was saying yes to that show, and it was working with a production manager, which is an important role, but we'll come back to that later on. Working with a production manager called Brian Moses, and I've worked with him for years now. I've worked with him on Jamie Johnson recently, but yeah, he got me on, and that was one of the of all the shows I've done. Strangely, that was like one of the happiest crew in the sense of every single day was good fun. It was a good laugh. Everyone got on really well. I think one of the camera operators that um, came on the show, Nick, said, we've been hearing talks about this. You're nicknamed the Happy Crew, which is really rare. Because normally we work long hours, everyone gets a bit tired, even though everyone's nice and friendly, you get a bit tired and stuff. But yeah, that was it. We kind of, and then it kind of spitballed then, which is kind of probably the reason why I'm saying all this is that after doing that one show and people get to know your name and you kind of work hard and you kind of really try and prove yourself, that's it then. Like the door was open, and then from there, Casualty called. They wanted me to do more blocks, and I ended up being a loader for them. I ended up working on Doctor Who, Stella. I went as a trainee on that and a camera assistant. And then yeah, and like you said, since before that, and I've ended up on War of the Worlds, and then just the other day, I've just worked for a Sky drama, Extinction, and that's it. I think that was it when the and I will explain later on for everyone who's kind of curious as to how you get those jobs and how you get into that. I will give all that information to kind of help you guys. But when you get that starting block and you kind of get that momentum and going in as a camera department as a member of the crew in my career path, that's it. It kind of keep going and you kind of meet those people. Um, I worked with the DOP. He was a camera operator back then, Richard Stoddard, and he's doing a block coming up on a show I want to get on. So you kind of reach out, and all the people you meet along the way, you reach out and they help you out again, and hopefully I'm able to get onto that. And then just the other day that they go back to Wizards versus Aliens, I met a guy that was in charge of doing special effects at the time. He's now become a production manager and I was able to get on do B camera on Extinction through knowing him, and he knows the work I've done to date. So it does. It's a weird way of how I started, but that's kind of it for everyone. You get to that point where you meet people and you know people and you work hard, and it kind of goes from there. And yeah, and that's kind of how I got started in the industry after university.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for such a detailed response there, Gareth. And you were talking about starting as a trainee camera operator, and I wondered if you could touch on that a bit more. So how have you developed your career? You're talking a little bit about people you know noticing how hard you're working, but how else have you gone about developing your career?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to describe the root of the camera department, and the camera department's got quite a lot of roles within the department. So you've got you start off as a trainee, then you become a second AC or camera loader, be a second camera assistant or second assistant. Then you become first AC, first assistant camera, and that is also referred to as a focus puller. So the two different roles, you got the second AC, so the loader. Back in the days of films, they would obviously load the film into the camera, do all your negative sheets, your neg sheets to make sure everything's written down on set is correctly, what stop you're on, what stock you had, how long it goes in the bath for. I know it's all digital now, so it's kind of what some things are still film, but it's all changed. And that's how you kind of learn that role. And then you become a first AC, and that is deemed the role of focus puller. And that basically, which you probably, I don't know if any of you know what that role is, but that is kind of the person that's, well, in my time, you're next to the lens and you basically pull focus to the distance of where the artist is. So if they're 6'6" away, you pull to 6'6" in the lens, and that makes they're in focus. So, and that's the one thing I will say in the camera department. I think one of the hardest roles and the unsung hero of the camera department is the focus puller. I think that they get the most stress and of course the most pressure on a take, and they can kind of, even as an operator now, and having been a focus puller, I will say that a lot of my focus pullers help shape the shot in the sense of timing of the focus pull, and yeah, and just their awareness of the scene. But I can answer your questions and talk more about that. And then you become an operator, and then from an operator you can become a cinematographer or a director of photography, a DOP. So those are the kind of roles. Obviously, each department in film and TV, there are, you have a grip and the grip assistants. There's not many roles in that, but they've got their technical craft and work with the camera. So there's loads of roles on set that kind of where you can develop your career, or kind of start in that trainee type or assistant type role, and working up from there. But yeah, so kind of developing my career has been, I started a lot later than most. I was 25, I think, when I first started, which is quite, now time, a bit old for a trainee. But yeah, I think developing my career was kind of working through each of these roles, and really growing my knowledge technically, and just seeing people's ability to shape a scene or shape a shot, and also assist the director in, and the DOP, and creating that scene. So I think that was always my, even though I started late, and I think I'll say this now, I don't think I ever wanted to be, I didn't want to be a focus puller. I knew how tough it was, and I always wanted to be, me personally, I've always wanted to be a director. And I know probably many of you here kind of think, oh, I want to be a producer, I want to be a director. And it can happen. You can go straight into that role. You can produce an amazing short film, and you can get in there. And I'm not saying it never happens. I've worked with directors that have never gone through the ranks. They've done an amazing short film or an amazing piece, and they got through. And I've worked with them, and they've been brilliant directors. I've worked with some that have not been as good, just due to the fact of having not spent much time on set and not gone through the roles, and not developed their skill based. And that proves a little bit difficult. And I, even though I never want to be a focus puller, I ended up being one for like 5 years, I think, in the end. So I did end up being a focus puller. It did end up shaping me creatively, and I do think that if I didn't do those roles, if I didn't complete those roles, I wouldn't be able to do the work I do now without appreciating what the crew do next to me. Um, yeah, I think that not everyone has followed that step. Like I said, some people have gone in and they've gone straight into directing, and they've been great. And like I said, some have not been. You kind of have to shape that. But me personally, having gone through each role in each department, I know from certain roles where there's going to be a difficult shot. There's going to be a shot that maybe you're on longer lens, we're wide open, so it's very shallow depth of field. And I know for a fact that we may have only got 5 minutes to get this in before we have to wrap up, before we lose the artist to that to time-ins, or to night shoot, and you can't run over. I know that there's a big pressure shot for my focus puller next to me, and he or she will have that challenge to be able to nail that shot and kind of get it. And the same for me. But I think no matter what the role through the camera team, whereas you feel like you're being worked to the bone as a trainee, from making cups of tea to cable bashing to cleaning to sorting through every piece of equipment, to a loader putting the board on, the clapperboard on to kind of sync sound. What I realized quickly halfway through is that they're all really important roles, and they've all given me the knowledge and technical base to be a better operator. And I'll say that because as a trainee, you get to learn the kit inside out, what pieces go where, what pieces fix onto what. And that is really important for when you become a loader, because then when you're building the camera with your focus puller and building different rigs, the focus puller may say to you, I want the BPA plate, or I want the side bracket for this, so I want the FF5, or and as a trainee, you'll have worked so hard to kind of know these things and get used to these things, that as a loader it becomes second nature. And this is the one thing I always tell my trainees and kind of teach my trainees. When you first get on set, you've got the clapperboard, and we try and give our trainees a little experience putting that board on, hitting the sticks to sync, and announcing the information. And that feels daunting. Like, it feels like you step in front of camera, and it feels like everyone is going to listen to you and listen to every word you say. And it is true, because people do listen, but then when you get further on, people don't really listen to the information. They're quiet for the board because because that's the most professional, because they need to sync the sound. But what you learn as a loader and as a trainee from that, and I'll try and explain it as quickly as I can, and you'll notice when I show you certain things in the videos later on. When you put a board on, you try and fill that clapperboard into the whole screen. So it's roughly about that size where I'm showing my hand now. So it fills the screen, so it'll fill my face. And you've seen from behind the scenes footage and on films and stuff, that clapperboard fills the screen, or should fill the screen. So it gives all the information of the take, from stop, roll, everything. And what that, without knowing at the time, what that kind of set me up for, especially shooting in Super 35 sensors and film, what that sets you up for is an understanding of distance. So I'll try and explain it as quick as I can, but by all means, feel free to ask more questions. When you put a board on, if we're on a 50 millimeter size lens, we try and say to the loader or to the trainee, but when you put this board on, we're on 50 mil, so try and hold that board about 5 foot away. That means that 5 foot away, it would fill the screen. Now, it doesn't feel like much at the time. You're thinking, okay, well, I'm just making sure I get that board on, so you've got it there, so you can see my hand. It fills the screen. You've got all the information on. But then what you don't realize as a focus puller, and as a loader, then you started to learn distance. You started to learn distance from the lens, and you start to realize how important that is as a focus puller, knowing distance and where artists stand. I think what I realized then from that clapboard and doing it was, for instance, a clapboard is roughly the same size as someone's face and a little bit of their shoulders. So as a focus puller, when you're on a 65 or an 85 millimeter lens, and someone walks up to the lens and you kind of try and focus pull or pull that lens into where you think they are, because obviously they change, they move forward, they lean. You try and do that. But previously from your training, without realizing it, you'll have put a board on, which is roughly the same size as a headshot or as a medium close-up or a close-up. You'll realize that if I'm on an 85 mil and they're practically filling that, they must be roughly about 8 foot 5 away. So even though it's a bit more detail than you kind of need to know for now, it just shows you how each role in the camera department is so important without you realizing it, and kind of building up those technical skills. Like, for instance, when I'm on set now, I can if a director says to me, well, look, the artist is over there, they're standing behind that counter, and I want a medium close up on them, I want to be a mid shot on them. I, from focus pulling, know roughly that person may be about 10 foot away, and they want to go medium close up. So I know the 100 mil will get me that, or if they're that far away and they want to be waist shot, I know I can divide that. I go 50 mil, because that's you obviously double up from 50 mil, you get you that. So these are all kind of, and this is why I kind of always try and preach to people. Like, and I was once like it. I thought I'd leave university, I'd do a short film, and I'd become a director. And I'd be bouncing from project to project as a director. And I will never say take that dream away from you, because I think we're in the creative industry. Who are we to take away creative thoughts and creative passions? Keep thinking that, keep going with that, because you never know, it will happen. But I also think that you've got to earn and try and shape that career. So why not do it in the industry you want to work in? So that's why I always say, go through every role, become a trainee, become an assistant, build up your knowledge, build up your skill. Because when you get that chance to direct or to produce or to get that higher role, you'll have done it with so much years experience, you'll be better for it. And I think people around you will appreciate that. And I know from Kieran, from talking to you the other week, that has come inevitably important during COVID, because obviously times change, and I know it must be tough for you guys. I know you've gone back to teaching lectures and stuff, but I know it's been a lot of Zoom. But all that lens sizes, understanding distances, and working it has become so important during COVID, because we've had to on BBC Casualty, I've done a lot of work. We've kept the 2 meter distance for cast and crew, so we can't be 2 meters each other during shooting. But also we've kept the 2 meter distance for cast members, so they can't be within 2 meters of each other. So it's really important that we keep these rules. Everyone's wearing masks, but with that comes new challenges and new problems and new headaches, because now you instantly have to jump up to higher lenses. Whereas before, if someone was 6 foot away from me, I could get 6 foot over the person. I could be dirty over the person's shoulder, shooting over the shoulder to the subject. I could be on that shoulder, and I could do as a 65, and I know they're about 6.5 foot women, getting a lovely headshot of them. But I can't be that close to someone's shoulder. So I now need to be 2 meters off the person's shoulder that is in foreground, and the subject was in front of them. I kind of need to be almost 12 feet away from them. And at the same time, the show doesn't want the viewers to make it look like that everyone's standing 6 feet apart and the camera's 12 foot away. They want the show to look like it did, and rightly so. It should look like it did when it aired before COVID and before the pandemic. They wanted to make it look that way. And I think that the crew I work with, they've done the show for many years, and they'd gone through the ranks. I think we worked hard, and I've got a video here to kind of give you like one of the scenes we did. That was one of the first episodes I did back after COVID. I think this is episode 3. I'd worked on the first episode that came back that showcased the pandemic, and that was a fun one to work on. Really, obviously, difficult subject considering that most people are still going through the pandemic. But this one I'm going to show you now is what's his episode 3. And to set it up, one of the paramedics has been caught dating and caught in the bedroom of Connie's daughter's room. And the director had come and said, look, I kind of want this confrontation. And a classic confrontation is always, two profiles, people at each other, and it's almost a good romantic, but it's also a good confrontational profile. But that is close. You can't do that with 2 meters. So they wanted that. The director, Julie Edwards, is an amazing director. She wanted that conflict to go, and she wanted, because Connie, the character, many of you, if you haven't seen Casualty, Connie has got this really good stern vibe about her. She's in charge, always in charge, quite scary to be in front of. So we try to do it in a way that we couldn't put a lens on and have them 2 feet apart. It just looks too wide. It looks weird while they're there. So using focus pulling skills that I had from before, and I'm talking to Julie, the director, we came up with this idea of, if we put our subject Bobby in the middle, and we draw a circle of 6 foot around 2 meters, circle around him, we can get Connie to circle him. I'll be on the opposite side of the circle with the camera, and we'll track round, and we'll make it look like she's like a shark circling her prey, and that kind of gives that vibe for that scene. I'll come back to the video and explain a bit more, and I can wind it back, but I'll share my screen here if I can do that, and I'll start playing this now. Let me know if you can hear it.
Make it closer more for attracting flies. I know exactly who's calling, that's my opinion. No problem. They don't mind how. Sorry about everything. I don't think you have better things to do with your time than hang around with 16-year-olds. 16. Increased to 16. Did she not tell you? No, of course she didn't. That's why I'm here to clarify. Okay, I swear I did not know. See, not much of a challenge, are you? I'm a little disappointed in her choice of name. Stay away from my daughter. Okay? Okay.
So can you still hear me, Kieran? Just double checking you can hear me.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Can you see my arrow at all on the screen? Brilliant. So I'll kind of go through this. So I kind of, you know what, I just realized there's a little bit of a bit of a mistake here. I don't know if you can see it now. So when he walks in, you can actually see the 2-meter distance. So I'll just pause it there. So can you see just in front of his feet, there's a small, they've obviously not spotted this, there's a small light box in front of him. That is basically the tape marks we use for marks for artists. So that was his center point. I think he gets there now, just in a second. So he would basically stand. Now looking at that shot there, at that shot, let me get back, apologies for that. So looking at that shot there, I'm sorry, the joys of technology, working with cameras but I can't work with a computer. Look at that shot there. So that's the distance they would have been for the entire scene, which, if you look at it, it's not the best. You can't really convey a message of dread or confrontation at that distance. And I think that is always the struggle we've had at the moment shooting in COVID. So the idea then of drawing this circle around Bobby here and having the camera the opposite sides, we were able to use like a tighter lens. So as you can see here, that is quite two meters. So you can see that they've been 2 meters the entire time, and I'm another 2 meters behind Amanda. So as you can see in this shot, it's a lot looser, it's a lot baggier, which is okay because it works as a wide, it works as a master. But the important thing we got to sell this was that we used tighter lenses. So instead of maybe starting with, say that you could start this as a wide, you start this in a 32 mil. This is probably more like a 40 or a 50, just so we can start that. And then when we get in on the shoulders, we can crush that distance using tighter focal lengths. And again, this all comes from, I'll click out of the screen, this all comes from, am I back with you? Can you see me? Yeah. This all comes from, again, learning each role kind of guides you and builds you up from that, and it gives you that knowledge so that when these problems come up and when these challenges arise, you can use the knowledge you've done and the knowledge and what you've learned to kind of put yourself into those scenes and give the director a creative output rather than just trying to shoot things and maybe not nail it and not get it. And maybe it'll look like it's 2 meters apart. It'll look a little bit too baggy. So yeah, I think that's that I'm not very long-winded, but that's how I developed my career. And I think I know I mentioned you before. There'll be other things you can do. I've learned geared heads, so I can operate on the wheels. So it's basically like a geared wheel. So there's so many ways you can, within the camera department, if you don't want to go higher and you want to be a career focus puller or a career camera operator, there are so many things like Steadicam, gimbals these days, like I said, geared wheels or geared head. You can learn these and that can develop your career too. But I wanted to show you that video so you can kind of get a gist of what it's like using your knowledge, and especially now in the time of COVID.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant to hear how you kind of adapted to COVID and how you're drawing on past knowledge that you've learned throughout your career and possibly even at university as well. So it's really nice to see how that's still of use to you. And I think my next question for you, Gareth, is if you were going to be starting your career this year or in the next couple of years, what advice would you give yourself based on the experiences you've learned now?
Advice. I've always said this. When I was starting out, I did a lot of traveling. I did a lot of shows. So like Being Human, Phone Shop. That was in London. Franklin when it was in Leeds. You do get to travel, and I think that would be my advice if you're starting, is to stick with that, keep doing that, because you can you know, I've been guilty of it sometimes. You can stay with a team or you can stay with a show and be on it for quite some time, and you miss out on a lot of things. You know, you turn down a lot of shows. You think, wow, I could have gone and done that. So I think my advice is always is to kind of move around and try different jobs. Don't be afraid. It'll feel weird because it's different now, because in the last 10 years, production in Wales has gone massive. You know, there's so many things shooting here. Whereas before it was a lot of Bristol and London. It was kind of hard to get those jobs, you know, especially when London being such a big area and there'd be so many people there in the crew. But I do think, if any advice, it is get used to kind of doing that little bit of traveling, get used to kind of moving around a lot. And I think even though it'll feel tiresome and long-winded, you'll benefit for it. It'll benefit in the long run, definitely.
Okay, great. And a kind of follow-up question to that: how would you advise someone that wanted to start in this kind of industry? How would you go about starting in it?
Do you know what? That is probably one of the most important ones, isn't it? Yeah, I didn't know any of this, and probably like yourselves, didn't have a clue where to start. There's people you can contact how to get into the industry, and they're going to be the people you're going to go to each time to be able to get work on that. One of those roles is a production manager. One I've worked with quite regularly has been Brian Moses, and I start with a trainee as him on Wizards vs Aliens. But with production managers, they will move from job to job, and they tend to be in charge of organising the crew. There's a lot more to it than that. There'll be a lot more detail in the production manager. But one job that I know they do personally is book crew. Hence the reason why I've been able to get booking. So what you can do is, which I know sounds like, well, how do I even get their numbers? What you can do is, any particular TV shows, you know, shooting in your area or anything you see on TV, there'll always be a production company at the end it's made by, or you can Google these days of who they're made by. So, for instance, I'll give you an example of Doctor Who is filmed in Wales, and so is BBC Casualty, and so is Poblicum. And with that, you can contact, for instance, I did it at the start. You contact, I ended up contacting Roselock, which was like the studio at the time, and asked to be put through to each and any individual production. But the better way to do that is get hold of that production company's number, or phone the studio and the switchboard. There's Dragon Studios now. You can phone that, and you can kind of give them a call and ask to speak to either the production manager or the production coordinator. And from that, you can then get their email contacts and then email them or say to them, look, I'm looking to get into the industry. I'm looking to start as a trainee. I'm looking to develop my skills and work as part of whatever department. I'll use the camera department. I know that. I'm looking to become a trainee in the camera department. And then sometimes, with pure luck, they'll say, brilliant, we're looking for a paid trainee for a block, which is great because you're getting paid for it. You're all brand new. You have to start somewhere, and that's completely fine. They're going to train you. It's great. Sometimes they'll say, look, we haven't got a trainee role, but we've got additional days. So when it comes to that, they may say to you, oh, we do a work experience program, do this and that. When it comes to work experience, I've always said this to any of my trainees, excuse me, I always say, don't do more than a week, because I always feel that productions can afford you. If you do like 4 days, they can definitely afford you the 5th day. If you work really hard, bust a gut, try and learn the new skills, try and take everything in, try not to be told twice for everything, and try and take it. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because I think someone once told me the only stupid question is the question you never ask. So it is important to ask those questions. What does this do? What is this? How does this work? You know, find the right time, you know, in between scenes and they're blocking. And then they'll get you back. If you work hard and you show willing, they will definitely get you back in, and they can definitely afford you. So yeah, the two main people are a production manager and a production coordinator. They'll be able to guide you because they'll be organizing so much. My wife is actually a production coordinator, and I think she's busier than me more than half the time. And then she gets inundated with emails and stuff. And they will have, like, for instance, I just did it this week. I did the old emailing out. I'm not working at the moment. I just finished a shoot last week, so I didn't do all the email out. I've done the old classic of emailing seven different productions to see if I get on. I've only heard back from one, so you may not hear back from any of them. But what will happen is you may go on a file, but you've made that contact. So feel free that if you don't hear anything within 3 to 4 weeks, drop another friendly reminder saying, hello, just check you got my email. Be polite about it. They are going to be very busy, so they may not get back to you. But you're just doing that friendly reminder. But production manager and a production coordinator will be your best base to start. And that is my key tip, as I didn't know that. They will be your best place to start and kind of get your foot in the door. It is up to you then, though, when you're on set, to kind of show willing and work really hard to keep that foot in the door and bust that door wide open and keep going.
Great. I think that's a great piece of advice there, Gareth. And I think maybe it's a good time as well to kind of branch out into other questions. So
Yeah, definitely.
what I'll do now is I'll pause the stop the recording,